follows, is the mayor hiring the right person, is council approving the right person?
Yes.
So you're really not accomplishing anything.
Well, I don't, I guess I'm not sure I agree with that, Dave, because unless we make change, unless, I think 10 years from now, I think that statement wouldn't be true anymore. I think there would have been incremental change that would have occurred and moved it in the right direction. But if we don't strive for causing that change to occur, we can assure that it will not.
But are you also going to say that there's a minimum requirement of work in the service department X years, like some of these other departments have a certain certificate, things like that?
No, I think that position description should be something that the mayor should have and the administration should have already. The position description that defines those types of things, absolutely. But there are things that the state says our service director is responsible for today, that our finance director is responsible for today, that our charter is not consistent with.
Dave,
That's what I'm saying.
Dave, with all due respect, the state law that you've been reading relative to that are for statutory cities. We're a charter city. We don't have to follow state law. We can be different and consistent with
Only
state law.
if our charter says it's
that.
different.
No, and right now it does.
No, it doesn't.
So really,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna throw this out, okay? In a lot of cities, for example, the service department needed to resurface or asphalt a road, he would put together his bid specs and say, I want to resurface with this process. And then he would go to the finance director, and the finance director would make sure that the bids were issued properly, because the finance department is responsible for the money. And they would advertise it, they would accept bids by noon on a certain date, open the bids in accordance with law, turn over those bid vendors to the service department for review and evaluation. The service department would then identify which he felt was the best and the lowest and best bidder, not necessarily the lowest price, but the lowest and best, and then turn that over to the law department for contracts. We don't want, for example, the service department writing a contract. That's not their job, it's the law department's job. And then it would go to council for legislative approval. So just because it's in state law doesn't mean we need to follow it. It's really up to how a city wants to organize and wants to, you know, back when our service department, service director did do everything just about. But that was way back when. We've transitioned, not, you know, we're not the city of Akron, but we've certainly transitioned to a bigger city. So just don't stifle yourself when you're reading the state law. Those are Parma, Canton, those are statutory cities, and they follow what's in that state law, but we're not. We haven't been for 30 years.
I understand that, Peggy. I think you don't give me the credit maybe I should get, because
Well,
I
you
do
said that
understand it.
but you did say that our charter wasn't like state law. We don't need to be like state law.
Correct. Our charter, because our charter does not reflect certain state statutes that are in existence now, we are not in compliance with them. That is not acceptable, okay? Just because we are allowed to deviate from state law if we specifically state we're going to deviate in our charter. If we don't, we're bound to follow state law. And I'll give you an example, okay? An example regarding procurement. And I'm focusing on procurement because that's where 30 years of my experience is. Dealing with municipalities as a supplier, providing engineering and consulting services as well as contracting services just to municipalities, okay? The statutes right now, Ohio Revised Code requires that we have a board of control. That board of control consists of 3 people: the service director, the finance director, and the mayor. So when a bid is open, that bid is supposed to be opened by those 3 people. They're supposed to open it together, they're supposed to tabulate those bids, and then they're supposed to review them together in terms of coming to a decision, okay? That's what the state law currently requires, and we don't do that. Yet nowhere in our charter does it say we're not going to do that, we're going to do it this way instead. So because it doesn't say we're going to do it this way instead, we're supposed to be following that, and we don't, okay? I'm not saying that in itself is a problem. I am simply saying that there was a time when it was appropriate that that a service director, could come up through the ranks and have minimal qualifications and be perfectly functional at that job. But I'm saying today, because of all of the responsibilities that that person has, okay, we need to be considering, you know, do we need to strengthen the qualification requirements by charter for those roles?
Do you have some language proposed that you want?
I do, I did not bring it tonight, I wasn't expecting us to talk about this tonight, so, but
Excuse me, I think he's right. I have been in contact with the Attorney General in the state on a lot of stuff. They tell me, like he said, if the state requires 3 on the committee, the city can have 4, 5, or 6, but they can't have 2. Ours can be greater than the state, but not lesser. See what I'm saying? So no matter what we do, if the state says you need 3 on this committee, you can have 4, 5, or 6, but you can't have 2 according to the Attorney General. So even, we can make our rules, they can always be better than the state, but they can't be lesser, according to the Attorney General.
I did not bring it, I apologize, but I was.
Sorry, why don't you hear Josephine and council or the group before the next meeting? With that being said, is there anything else we need to discuss in Article 7? And again, David, that language, if you have proposals for other of the heads, you know, I would love to see.
So
Okay,
if,
well, I only
if
did it
your
for the
language-
service department.
But if
I-
your language would be consistent to all the directors?
No,
qualifications.
what I wrote was specific to this section, section 7. But I do think we ought maybe look at the other ones and see, you know.
Okay.
Some of
Like
the
I said,
others
my
are
experiences are
bylaws.
in this
I
area.
heard the director of public service, and there's a director of recreation requires that they have a degree and stuff. No, not a degree, but they have, knowledge in municipal recreation, finance and budgeting, business priorities. And then there's the job descriptions.
All right, are we done with Article 7 for right now? Let's go into Article 8, which is public safety.
Other than the removal, I think it's pretty much the same as all the other departments.
And I agree with that. I just have one question though. We talked about it very briefly. I just want to point out, so we come back to it. So you know how we had talked a couple, at one of the meetings before about how, you know, the mayor and council shouldn't have any other public office except the one they're elected to. So the same thing in the line 562. The mayor in addition to his other duties. So isn't that a public position? So it's kind of a little conflict with 303. So if he should have no other duties, I mean,
Well, I think until such time that council determines, in my mind, that there shall be a safety director, the mayor has to act in that role. I mean, until that happens, then somebody has to do that. There has to be somebody
right, it has to
there
be,
do that.
absolutely has to have
So,
somebody.
When council determines that the city's grown to such significance that, and the department has, and that there needs to be that individual, then they make that decision. Otherwise, the mayor has to be that enforcement officer.
Well, at the last charter review, Shane Barker brought up the fact of hiring a separate safety director outside of the mayor, but they didn't want to pay the money for a safety director. Right now, and don't mind me, I keep going with the state. A safety director must be certified by this, for everything. Even when you were safety director, Joe, you actually had no authority, like to call out, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but.
That's not what we're talking
That's
about.
separate, Chuck, but I think under this circumstance, when council does make that decision, says, okay, we need a safety director, then they will go out and hire a certified, or someone that is, somebody that has the experience, the certification, the qualifications to be that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Should it be on the ballot that we should have a safety director certified other than the mayor.
You're leaving that ability to the council members. to
That's the
make that.
problem, right there
Well,
again.
that's not really a problem, it's a financial issue, Chuck. I think that if this city had as much money as Beechwood, we'd be hiring all kinds of people.
Joe, we have a $2.5 million carryover,
Well-
the most, even, if you had that money, you know where you would have done with it.
Well, but if you had the money that a community that is as wealthy as Beechwood, for instance, they got a $25 million
Yeah.
reserve fund, if you will, then you can do a lot of things that we can't do here in Macedonia. Now, as we get bigger and more things are occurring and you get more monies in your coffer, then yes, you can do those things. And I think at that point, when they see that there's a greater need, we were always hoping that we could put another police officer on the road, let alone get a safety director.
You mean to tell me, Joe, this city can't come up with $100,000 out of that $2.5 million carryover to hire a certified safety director who can tell police, to fire, and everybody what to do? Don can't do that right now.
But you have a
We
police
need it.
chief.
We need
Yeah,
it.
we need it. I really don't see it. I really don't see us having to go out and spend that money.
Well, I'd like in a few years to see a Nordonia Hills
Yeah.
with one safety director for all the small little communities.
Yeah, but
That would be nice, but,
You're really.
yeah, I know, until
you're-
some people
you're
learn
wishing-
to play well with others, it's not gonna happen.
But
I saw that.
Tina,
That sandbox, there'll be a lot of sand getting
Tina, I
kicked
had
around.
said when I was mayor, and I'm gonna tell you this, that if I thought that all these communities could come together, I'm gonna tell you honestly, I would have stepped down as mayor to see that happen.
So are we talking when hell freezes over?
That's right.
No, that's when we'll get us a certified safety director.
Are you asking if this is in conflict with the other? Because there's a section in the charter, and David will have to explain it a little bit. 1907 says, effective partial invalidity. A determination that any part of this charter is invalid shall not invalidate or impart the force or effect of any other part thereof. And does that mean, like, if someone questioned, this says this here, but this says this here?
That's typical of any contract, by the way.
Contract.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that, for contracts that, if there's any section of the contract that's disqualified, doesn't mean the entire contract's gonna be thrown out.
Oh, okay, so,
I
thank you.
guess-
Calling on my legal
I
counsel here,
guess,
but.
I would go back to line 192 under the 3.02 qualification of the mayor, and it says, the mayor shall hold no other elective public office except he may be a member of the charter commission or, safety director. You know, I just, first it says no, and then it says, but back here it says it could be safety director. So it's just a little inconsistent, that's all, no big deal.
Well, you know what the big kicker is that it doesn't hold any financial value to it.
Right now.
I mean, right now, but if council decided they wanna do it, but then there's an issue ethical issue with whether or not a mayor can receive any additional compensation once he's elected. And the answer to that, based on the Ethics Commission, is that you can't. So, that's been tried and tested, by the way, so.
Can we get our money back for what we paid someone
Well,
to be acting service director?
well, that, I
And
can't
got paid?
answer any questions about that, but I can only say that this was an issue that was raised many, many, many years ago in another community, that the individual actually at that time was able to get the safety director's pay.
Yeah,
I know.
you got two salaries.
And he had two salaries,
And
right?
safety
Right,
director.
right. So, and I think since then, that issue has now been raised at a higher level with the Ethics Commission and others, and well, yeah, you can't do that.
You don't know who he's talking about.
What?
Yeah, he was the only one that ever got that accomplished, by the way.
He was-
Don had tried to get this to do that, I thought the law department said he could do that.
He did do it, he got paid.
Right.
Wasn't very much money, a couple
He did
thousand.
for a couple weeks.
Until it got stopped.
All right,
And
Um,
I
until it got
apologize, I
stopped.
have to go to the council meeting, so I do have to leave, but
Right.
if you would, or if Josephine would let me know how far you got in your
Okay.
discussion,
All right.
I'll email everybody my comments on the next couple sections that I have. And
Great.
then, so we'll be all on the same page at the next
Right.
meeting in
all
February.
right. Thanks for stopping by. All right, Department of Public Safety, Article 8, anything else that we need to discuss? We'll move on. The Department of Law, Article 9. Does anybody feel that there needs to be any changes or thoughts in that?
Department of Law,
Yeah.
I still think going over all the money and charges, we need an in-house attorney. I think the people should be able to vote on it. And the reason I said that, if you, and I don't wanna bring all the records out, at every council meeting, when council asks the law director, if he answers it at the council meeting, that comes under his,
Right.
all right. And if you watch the records, 99, I'll get back to you, he goes back to his office. I got the records last year, what he charges. He could have told us at the council meeting, but he tells council after that, and it's like $300 fee. So my question is, I still believe if we had a decent in-house attorney, okay, and doing my snooping around, I think we paid the law department last year $200 and some thousand for everything. Checking around, there's a possibility we could get a good in-house attorney, say for even $120,000. And the reason I said that is, if you check the records, 8 or 9 times a day, the police chief and the fire chief call his office, and we're charged for it. If he was sitting down in an open office right there, and I come right down and ask the law director a question, don't cost me nothing. Now, as far as Saturdays and Sundays are concerned, there isn't that much court, is there that on day, Saturday and Sunday, there aren't many court cases, are there?
There's no court case.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying, if we had an in-house attorney sitting there, and you had to go to court sometime this week, he's being paid for it.
I've said we should go to an in-house counsel too, but I mean, I think that's a political decision to be made by mayor and or council. And, the mayor's obviously opposed to it. Several on council are opposed to it. I'm not sure if it's an appropriate thing for, charter review.
Well, I'll just say this, I think you gotta look at and I'm sure that Dave can attest to this. It's not just hiring a law director, it's hiring a law director, an administrative assistant to the law director, and then having all of the other support needed to support the law director. So there's a chain of things that need to occur. And I think when you start adding those up, then you need to look where you're going to be.
What about the other cities that have it, Joe?
Now, I think, though, if you're concerned about what's being charged, that should be as a part of whatever the retainer is, and that should be a part of the whole scheme of things. I'm not sure what that makeup is anymore of how that's being charged, but when I was mayor,
There was just a change a couple months ago.
Okay,
so
there
we
was-
have work to address them.
Okay, so there was a basic fee for all things that related to the law department. So whatever the law
Right.
department did, it was included in that retainer. I don't know what the system is working now and how it's working with the, if it's changed, Dave, then you know better than I, so.
It's been redefined, I think would be a better way to put it. But my statement is, again, I don't think it's a charter review issue. I think it's an issue that has to be addressed at council and the mayor. I just don't think it's a,
And you know, every mayor that's gonna come into office, if, you know, we have an election coming up in this year, is this the year that we have a?
Next year, yeah.
Or is
No,
it-
this year.
This year.
This year, but,
So,
yeah.
you know, depending on who becomes mayor, I mean, you gotta, if the mayor wants to change law directors, then he's gonna change law directors. I mean, that's what's gonna happen if there's a change in guard. That's what happens in the system.
There are cities that have the law director as an elected position as
Sure.
well. And I didn't know whether, you know,
Yeah,
anybody
Stowe-
wanted to
Stowe-
talk about that.
Yeah,
but-
Stowe's one, I think there's, well,
I think-
I don't think Hudson has it, I think they have,
No, they don't.
they don't have it.
I think it'd be, you know, a little bit of concern to politicize that kind of position.
But you know,
It's
having
it's a
election
functional
positions in those areas, you know, you create a whole new dynamic
Yeah.
of things that occur when you.
Well, that's what I'm
create,
saying.
An elected position, you know, is within your government.
interestingly, the law department director in Stowe has been the same guy for 20 years. part of the problem with that is Macedonia is a relatively small city, so that means you're gonna have a relatively small number of lawyers who are gonna be able to run for it, because they gotta live within the city.
Yeah, but Joe, when Malani was mayor, he has an in-house attorney, and he explained how they handle everything. And
No, he doesn't. He is Brian.
Doesn't have any.
before,
Brian, rather,
yeah, before he went there, I'm talking about before when I talked to Malani. The question was, can an in-house attorney handle all these different things? The answer would be no. But it's a scenario, if you were the in-house attorney and you work for another law firm, you could say, hey, I can't handle B, but Sam Smith can handle B. So my point is, how do we save $100,000 a year?
Well, I think if you go what you really need to do is you need to go look at other communities and what they're doing. So, I mean, you know, we got a neighbor, Twinsburg here, look at what Twinsburg does. You know, who's it, Masters or something like that, they have, as the law director now.
Right.
When Chuck retired over there, they got a new law director. So this is not something new, so it's just a matter of how you work with the law director and what you include in their fee, what they're supposed to do for that fee. And that's the issue that you have here. When you get into litigation, it's just like, I'll give you an example, I mean, you know, NOPEC, and God bless NOPEC, but, you know, we have a director of law that works for NOPEC, and he's on a contract basis with us. He provides us a service, a basic service. But every time a litigation or an issue that comes up before the PUCO or PSP that's coming up before with First Energy or whatever the case is, their fees are like off the chart. But that's because they gotta go to Columbus, they gotta go to Washington, they gotta do all this other stuff for NOPEC. Now they're representing, what, 180 communities, but my point is that the number never comes in where you would hope it to come in. I mean, I love lawyers, by the way, because you can help us out in different things, but on the other side of it, I know that, you know, sometimes those numbers, you look at them and go, holy cow, you know, why are these numbers so high? And I've come to the realization with that, by the way, you know, we got Brickler and Eckler that represents NOPEC, and those numbers are gonna be high. And I think if you start to figure out what that would be if you were to bring an in-house guy, and then everything else had to be farmed out, you'll find out that you're gonna be farming out a whole lot of stuff. And that law director that you have working for you is going to have to.
Well, I have no argument with what I'm saying, Joe. If something comes up in this city, and if I gotta bring 6,000 pages, that I have a problem. I don't want an opinion, because it can go either way. If you came up to me, you're my attorney, and you says, case law says you're wrong, you shut up, right? In my opinion, that could go either way. Win, lose, or draw,
But that's the way that it's, you know, Chuck, it's never gonna change no matter who the law director is.
oh, I disagree with you,
I'm
Joe.
gonna tell you right now.
If you get an honest attorney,
No, I'm
you
gonna
tell
tell
me there's no honest attorneys around?
No, I'm saying,
I'm keeping my mouth shut.
no, I'm saying that you're going to have, most law directors are going to give an opinion as it favors one side or the other necessarily, but it's one that he has to stand up and say that it's going to be defendable. If he doesn't, and he can't defend it, then he looks like an idiot.
That's what I'm saying. Counsel should say to anybody, to the attorney, first of all, there is this case. Don't give me opinion, case law. If there's a case law on the books, if he's right, you fight it. If he's wrong, you shut up. This has never happened, Joe.
Chuck, what part of the charter are you talking about and what needs to be changed?
In-house
What do you
attorney,
what do you
Department of
suggest?
Law.
Okay, so your suggestion is that we have an in-house attorney?
One that is capable, give him a decent salary, he spends Monday through Friday right there in that office. Anybody who needs him, don't have to call him on the phone and get charged $300 an hour for every time the chief of police and the fire, you should realize how many times they call to ask a question. So every time they
I
call
was
the
gonna say
department,
Twinsburg,
I understand, and I've heard,
it
I
doesn't really,
think,
I
yeah.
think, no, I was gonna say something, this is, thinks it's interesting, if you'll indulge me in Twinsburg's. It really doesn't say in-house attorney here, but it does say that the mayor shall, subject to the confirmation of council, appoint an attorney at law, who should be the attorney, a director of law. He has to have 5 years' experience. Said director shall serve at the pleasure of the mayor. The appointment shall be concurrent with the mayor's elected term and shall expire at the end of each term. But it doesn't say anywhere in this paragraph that he has to be in-house, and I thought Twinsburg's was in-house.
He's not officially in-house, he's there for so many hours a week.
And he has his own practice.
But basically, he's there as long as that mayor is there.
Well, that, I
That
thought,
mayor
I've never seen that sentence, I've just been
Yes.
reading it to others, I've never seen that sentence before.
And he's paid X amount, and that covers everything, and litigation.
And then if they need outside counsel like they've done for some big things, they will get outside
They
counsel.
would, yes.
But Chuck's suggestion is that we go with an in-house counsel. I think, we need to consider it, that's all.
All right, I don't think, my opinion is it's not a charter issue.
And the Ford has gotta go too.
9.4?
No, 656, council by 4 affirmative votes.
We've already discussed that.
That's all those 4s are going?
Well, they're up for,
Vote.
they're on the vote.
Okay.
They're on the block, all right. Let's move on to planning and zoning. Anybody got thoughts on any change that we need to change with planning?
Yeah. This last problem we had with Joe. According, again, no, sorry, Joe, you know me, according to the Board of Elections, okay, August is a special election.
We discussed that.
All right, will you let me finish? They've been arguing with me. If that's the case, and some people around there say August is a regular scheduled election, Joe should get his $10,000 back, because I was there when he presented council.
Hey, now I'm in favor of what you're talking about now.
Okay.
Wasn't
No,
that
I'm
hard?
just telling you, if it was,
Appreciate the donation, Joe.
if August is a regular scheduled election, like some of the people around have said it is, you should have never had to give them that $10,000. The State Department, I call everybody, the only time it's considered a special election, when the person wants it on the ballot, must pay for every precinct, and you hand them a check for $10,000, correct?
Maybe a little bit
I was
more.
gonna say,
but-
I
Or
think it was more.
Can you turn this into a suggestion for the charter that I can understand? I mean,
Follow
right
the
now, all I'm
rules.
seeing
Follow
you
the
do is
rules.
finger pointing and ranting, so.
Anytime you go from B1 to anything else,
But you know what, Chuck, I think that may be not necessarily in the planning commission. I think maybe that's I don't know where that maybe falls, but maybe
No,
that
it's-
falls in
That's under zoning.
yeah.
It's under, it's
it's
in
under
10.
zoning, yeah.
Is it in 10?
It is in 10, and it's 1003. And it's 1003.
1003,
Zoning to the, a zoning amendment.
because it says you go from R1 to anything else, the next election regularly scheduled, which is either May.
Well, if you wanna put something in there that would define what a regular meeting is, or a regular, election, then I think you need to define that and put that, or maybe that's your suggestion, if that's
Well,
what.
If you call the Board of Election, it tells you, Joe.
Well,
What is it?
A regular scheduled election is May and November, anything else is special.
Well, this begs the question though, let's say there's a timing issue. And you force whoever is doing it, you have it at special, you say in there, and then it's at the petitioner's cost.
Well, the attorney said it was legal, so we went by what he said, right,
But he
Dave?
paid.
Right, and he should have paid.
Yeah, he got
Just get your
Joe,
money
if I
back.
get your money back
No,
on that.
city broke the rules.
No, I don't think the city broke the rules, no, sorry, Joe. We liked your money, we're gonna keep it.
I wasn't happy with that. I was the first person ever, by the way, to ever pay for an election in this
That's because
city.
it was a special election, according to what the charter says. Well, I mean, according to what.
It was a regular, you have to remember, if there's something on the ballot that's going on countywide, that is then something that the county is putting in place, although maybe the city of Macedonia didn't have, and there's a lot of occasions where that occurs. But if it's a countywide election issue that's going on,
But
that's
Joe,
not a special election.
like I told you, I could call the Board of Elections and tell them what's going on. You know what they told me? I've got two of them. Hire an attorney, you got them up to Ungunias, because they're all legally wrong.
So Chuck, can you get my money back for me?
I'm trying, hey, Joe, I'm trying.
We
I
think you
did.
should have your money back.
Joe, I filed the complaints, honestly, because it said in here,
You don't pay for
Going-
regular elections.
going from a B1 to anything else must go on a regular schedule. A regular schedule election you do not have to pay for,
And you pay.
and you pay. Therefore, it is a special. If they're saying it's a regular, you got your money.
How much do you, I'll give you 10%.
I think you want to
What, Joe?
get your money back and donate it to the food bank.
Okay,
Oh, I've already turned this over to the Attorney General
Okay.
and all the television programs, and anybody I can get a hold of. I want to I called Strike Force FBI too.
good.
I want to find out who's crooked in here. I don't care anymore. I hope they all go to jail.
I don't want to go to jail.
So I wrote that you
The
want it
meals aren't good.
changed. You want line 690 changed, but how do you want it changed?
I think he wants it to say may or
In
not.
other words, anything going from an R1 to any other zoning classification must go on, and we have to define what a regular election is. And a regular election, according to the Board of Elections in Columbus and the Attorney General, is May and November. Anything else is considered a special.
Why don't you just ask Joe if he's going to rezone you more property, you won't have to pull with it. Right? You can just bypass the whole
When
thing.
you can't wait for.
I don't wanna be difficult, but I do wanna be a little funny. If you read the language of line 690, it doesn't talk about a regular election. It talks about the next election regularly scheduled, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't distinguish between a regular or a special election. It simply says the next election regularly scheduled.
Right, and there's two regular scheduled elections in the state of
I'm seeing
Ohio.
his logic. I'm totally seeing your logic.
See, there's a lot of gray area in
It doesn't
No,
the
matter,
charter and
the
how
point,
it's
the
written.
point is the way the charter is written, it doesn't matter whether it's a special election or a regular election. It's the next one that happens. That's what it says.
A lot of the writing, a lot of the form and
Your
writing,
regularly scheduled programming, you know.
right, that's, it's how this is written up. It's
Yeah,
very
I-
ambiguous and,
No, I think the language is
well,
quite
it's,
clear.
I don't
think
know,
you
I
just
think
need
it
to
could go
read it.
either way in some of these
Okay, so we're gonna put
instances.
it on the list. And then we're gonna-
It's actually on
So it's 10 times, right?
several
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on building, zoning?
And Mr.
Appeals?
And
Oh,
Mr.
no.
Nicolini actually put this one on,
Which
in
one's that?
1991.
What?
He put that amendment, he's recommended that amendment,
Okay.
about
Which
the
one?
zoning,
About the zoning,
the R1 zoning, he thanked him for any.
yeah.
All right, what are-
That was my contribution to the charter change at that time. Yeah. Which I didn't disagree with. I thought that was the right thing to do, if you will. And I think that, just so I can expound upon that, thank you for reminding me of that, but, when there was an issue that had to do with apartments that was going to go in on South Bedford, there was an outcry from individuals that lived over there that the city was trying to shove down apartments over there. So in response to that, that's when we put in that it had to pass within the precinct to which it was being offered. I thought it was a good thing. It had to pass throughout the city, obviously by the majority, but in the precinct, if it failed, then it didn't get passed. So, there are issues, however, where one individual could make a big difference, and I'll give you an example. When we put the rezoning of the villas at Terramina and Summit Point on the ballot, there was an individual that lived back there, and because I had offered to the planning commission that there be a helicopter pad put in here at City Hall, he then believed that every day they were gonna see helicopters flying in and dropping in at City Hall. And I made that recommendation because I knew how important it was to the city and the safety forces that every time we had an emergency situation in our city, we had to go out and cordon off an area. So we'd have to go to the Commons, we'd have to cordon it off, we'd have to go to Sears, cordon it off, go to the park, cordon it off. So you'd have to bring all of your forces to a central location so a helicopter could drop in. So I thought how nice it would be that it would be a dedicated location within our city so that when Life Flight came in to take somebody out who had a heart attack or whatever, a life-threatening situation, that they could drop in next to City Hall. And our safety forces would obviously, a lot of them would already be here on the premise. Well, that was one of the reasons that I believe now, given the fact that this individual who stood out at the polls and said, if you vote for this issue, you're gonna have helicopters in your backyard every day. So after that election, we lost by a few votes the first time it went on the ballot. And I went to the individual who was out there standing with this poster, if you will, and said, why would you do that? I said, that's not the truth in this matter. You know that that isn't going to be the case. Well, he says, well, I believed that there was gonna be helicopters here every day. So I said, you're gonna be like the guy that I could tell the story about, that you're gonna be the first one that has the heart attack, and then the helicopter can't get here because, you know, you don't want helicopters flying in on emergency situations. So again, that's the reason the precinct vote can be of issue. We don't have that much more property in Macedonia that you really have to concern yourself with that issue as much as we did back in those days. We have a lot of more property that could be rezoned. Today, I don't think that that's an issue. So again, my feeling would be is to remove it, but I'll be obliged by whatever the majority here wants to.
When you say remove, are you talking about removing all of 1003?
Only removing the part that the precinct has to pass it, that it's in, because I don't think that that's going to be an issue in the future. I really don't.
So if there's not that many residential areas, anything else, what the whole, why is the whole section of it?
Well,
Is there?
I think zoning's always right.
No, I get that. I mean, right now, council can, any zoning other than changing R1 to anything else, but is there a lot?
There's not a lot.
Yeah.
There's also, from my standpoint, I think Joe kind of says the same thing.
It's
He'd like to have it removed, but he's not really upset by it because it's not.
Yeah,
a
so
big
just,
issue.
so.
My thought is if it ain't broken, especially now, but we can put it on the list for further discussion.
Well, I put Macedonia precinct, that's it. There was another,
No, maybe when he does not get his own precinct.
no, well,
By charter.
I mean, I can't hit my own precinct.
seems like you do, Joe.
All right, what about Article 11, Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals? Does anybody have any thoughts about those?
What does it mean, 5 electors of the municipality? Board shall be made up of 5.
Residential.
Why 5?
Eligible to vote.
Is it 1 per council person, or
No.
just a flat number?
That's just the number.
Yeah. Electors meaning that they have to be qualified, that they're voters in the communities, in the community.
And I'm not happy, of course, with the length of term these people have been on. They can get retirement from Social Security before you get some new blood on there. I think 5 years is too long. Unless you don't have anybody else that wants to do it. Then that person can repeat another term. I think 5 years is too long.
You see, but that's where it comes back to the guy that you put into office. you don't like the guy that's in the office, then vote him out and then get somebody else in. Sometimes the experience, however, is good to have. I'm not suggesting that every board member, by the way, is a good board member. Don't get me wrong. And I sympathize with you that you want to serve on a board and you never got appointed.
Well, I'm honest.
You're well, welcome.
I
to
just
the-
told them, I just said, you're not gonna appoint me because I didn't vote for you, so I just tell the truth. I
Well-
could, whatever decision I would have made, I could have slept and laid my head down. These people that have been on here 10, 12, 15 years, we're having enough trouble keeping young people in Macedonia. Let's open up some of these positions to people who have been on and on and on.
I think that the way that it works, by the way, and I gotta tell you, in my day, it was hard to find individuals that wanted.
It's not hard anymore.
Okay, if there are, that's a great thing. I think that maybe council should encourage the administrator, the mayor, to go out and advertise that these positions are open.
They
so that-
finally forced him to do
Yeah,
that.
And that may be by legislation, and that's the way to do it, not by charter.
Are you suggesting term limits or something?
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
Except with the charter review, because it's only once every X amount of years, and it wouldn't be fair to say, okay, we can only do it once every,
There
you know.
is a codified ordinance relative to BZA, and it sets when it was established, vacancies, the chairman, the meetings, there's guidelines. And the 5 years of the 5 electors was established in 1962.
it's time to change that.
The ordinance would have to be amended.
I mean, that's the only
Okay, if it's
actual
not a charter
paid
issue,
board
it's an ordinance
actually in the
issue.
city, but I think when they get $15,
They're the only ones that pay.
they're the only ones.
Board of
that pay.
zoning appeals, they get 40 some numbers, I think.
No, it's $15.
$15 a meeting.
$15.
There are people, I'm sure here, that would do it for nothing, but you can't replace people that are stuck in like super glue. It's not fair to the residents to always be represented by the same people that have no that you don't need qualifications to be on. You don't have to,
No.
don't tell me those people know, you
I
know.
agree.
Okay.
They, you know, unfortunately.
There are some committees that you need to know stuff,
Yeah,
and there's some that you can learn as you go.
you know, the nice thing to have on the Board of Zoning Appeals would be to have those that have served on the Planning Commission to then go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, because then they've had the experience of seeing firsthand what's going on planning-wise. And you're right, I don't think that you can find any board, let alone the Board of Zoning Appeals, to have all qualified people to serve on these boards. It's people like you and me and residents that live in the community that you call upon to help serve your community.
Yeah.
Now, they have to have guidance by some help by the building department director, the.
Well, they've already
planning
went their route, and supposedly, the Board of Zoning Appeals is like a court of last resort. I have to have this, here's why I have to have it, and you're giving me special permission to do it. Now, all that takes is somebody with a little common sense to say, yeah, your relative doesn't have any legs, so you have to build a bedroom downstairs for him. I can see that, I could say, yeah, you're gonna get an exception. But, there's a lot of other things that don't make any sense. Conscience is all you need for a Board of Zoning Appeals. You're deciding whether something should be
I guess my
allowed.
point would be is that I don't know that you'd get any greater qualified people than what you currently have. I mean, I say that because, look at some of the people that are on there. There's a past council person that's sitting on there. There's, others that are just in business that are sitting on there. People that served on maybe other little things in the community. I don't always agree with maybe their decisions, and I don't always agree with planning decisions, if you will, that come out of the city.
Well, unless
that's-
it's changed, it's gonna continue
But
to
I don't-
happen.
But I don't know how you cure that, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's a problem.
I don't think the mayor should appoint
Well, who should appoint?
council. Let people that apply, and then let council decide which
But you
ones.
get the same
Do
scenario.
the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same scenario. I don't
Well,
know
how do you
do it.
how do you make it fair? You're a smart guy, how do you make it fair? And somebody that wants to be on this board or that board, and they won't even be given a second look because, you know, of who's already been on there. How are you gonna get somebody else with 10 years experience if you don't put them on?
I mean, really, it's a good question. I don't know how you can be any, I think that the mayor has to make that decision of who he brings on to recommend to council to be approved to sit on a board. Now, council obviously can look at the individual and say, Mayor, that guy doesn't have any, obviously, any understanding of what he's doing on that board. Why would you want to appoint him? So it's, I think, a little bit of council's.
I think you're right, it is council, they have to approve the
Yeah,
appointment.
so, I mean, I don't know that any change needs to be made here.
Probably
I think-
not.
I think the qualification of somebody that's going to serve, and there are gonna be other residents, it would be great if you could go out and say, you know, on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I'd like to go five engineers and architects to sit on that board. Because that's who I'd wanna pick.
Yeah,
And don't forget, Joe, if you don't like the Board of Zoning Appeals, the next step you take to court.
Right,
By law.
I mean, you know, the due process, I mean, truly, what Chuck is saying is true. I mean, if you aren't satisfied with the answer that they give you, then you go for for a judgment, and their declaratory judgment would be a way to go, or you know.
well, is this gonna be
court.
fair to leave it the way it is? 5 electors and with a term of 5 years, unless, you know, unless they
They're
wanna
staggered,
stay?
they're staggered. Well, that's where it comes back to council to say to the mayor, you got a person sitting on the Board of Zoning Appeals that shouldn't be sitting there. They are totally ignorant, or any board.
Or they don't show up.
Or any board. Go to the planning commission. You got planning commission members that are sitting there, and they have no knowledge of good planning. Get rid of them.
Could I ask a question about this section? On line 708, it says, under procedures established by council.
Well, there is, that's what I was just,
There's a book? Is
there's
that-
an ordinance, there's a codified section for BZA, 2 sections actually.
Are those
1135,
procedures established by council, is that what that, you're saying,
That's-
the
there's an
ordinance
ordinance.
is?
That's where
Yeah.
how the hearings are conducted.
Right.
Okay.
right.
Well, like where you agreed, Joe, is we have a case now, I think it's still gonna go to court. It involves a homeowner wanting to build at the bottom of the street, all right? One of the people on the Board of Zoning Appeals, it's on record, said, if you allow this person to build at the bottom of the street where the pond is, the water's gonna flood my house. She's at the top of the hill. How the hell does water run uphill? Now, I mean, to me, that person shouldn't be sitting there making a statement like that, and it's on record.
That's an issue, I think, then, when the appointment comes up, then council needs to urge the mayor, who's the appointing authority,
Right.
to evaluate that individual sitting on that board. I mean, you have to have some process to which we do this,
I agree
and
with you.
that's, if somebody's ignorant, they're ignorant. What can I say?
Well, I just hope that it gets changed, however it gets changed, because we're not doing our new residents and young family people who wanna get involved, we're not doing them any favors by having the same
I encourage
antiques on these boards and,
young people to get involved and others to get involved. Yes, you sometimes need new blood, and I agree.
that's exactly, well, we agree on that.
I agree, 100%.
Don't look for me on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay.
I think that's a safe bet. But I'm here. Okay, a little levity, very little.
All right, can we move on to civil service, I'm sorry. Does anybody have thoughts or changes for that?
I think that the civil service overall generally has conducted themselves in a very professional fashion. I think all of the, and I'm just going from experience and what we have done and how we have processed, just if I can add, you know, the fact that, and Josephine's been involved obviously in a lot of the civil service testing of police officers and firefighters. I think the process works well, so I don't know that unless there's something that has occurred in the recent years that we really need to make any changes there. I feel that this is one of the best commissions we have because they really provide us with a good list of individuals that have been truly tested, by the way. And the mayor and council can make a true decision on somebody that they're gonna put out either in the fire department or a police officer that we're gonna put on the street and give them a gun in our city, that this commission does a great job in doing.
I just have one point with the Civil Service Commission. There was a member of the Civil Service Commission that did not attend meetings for quite a long time. And I think he should have been replaced if he was unable to.
Well, in this case, this commissioner asked for a different time and they would not meet, and all the other men were retired.
Right.
He did ask to please meet after 10 o'clock. It's in writing, and the other commission members who were retired chose not to. He explained his physical limitations. It's in writing. It's
Yeah.
not something that's fabricated. And they chose not to meet. It's not as if he said, I can't meet because I don't want to meet. I don't want to meet. And they would not acquiesce to his time.
But that issue's over.
It is over.
So we don't have that
No,
scenario.
it's not an issue anymore.
No, it is not an issue.
It's not an issue anymore.
But it wasn't that he didn't attend because he didn't want to attend.
No.
Tina, this is your point that regardless of the reason someone doesn't attend, whether it's justified or not, if they're on that commission, they should either be there or they shouldn't be on the commission.
Well, I could bring up one of our missing members of the Charter Review. I feel bad for the situation, but my stepdad's dying in a nursing home in Twinsburg. My mother has dementia, and she's living with me, and I'm here. And how long do we go without the full committee here? I think there's got, and I do feel bad, but where do you draw the line and say, the Charter Review Commission is made up of X amount of people? Those X amount of people have to come eventually. I mean, I don't know if there was an excuse for tonight or, anyway, if I can get here with my circumstances, I think everybody ought to make the equal effort.
I think, at least on the charter issue, there's, unlike civil service, there's nothing here that says that there could be a removal. And I don't know if there's anything in the ordinance about charter review or how you remove that.
Well, I think that,
But it is, yeah, I understand your point.
I think that the process would be is obviously if you have a member of any commission that serves the city and you find that an individual isn't attending to the meetings and you don't get quorums and you can't provide the service that's necessary, then the mayor needs to then take the action of removal and appointing and reappointing. And that's a very simple thing, by the way. You get on the phone, you say to the individual, look, you're not attending the meetings and we can't have a quorum, so I understand you're busy and you can't make it,